Topping Talks. 105 hours a week, can't be beat. Welcome to Topping Talks. Topping Talks is a Topping Tribune production, and today's episode is proudly sponsored by Topping Technologies and ExpressVPN. Topping Talks is also on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Stitcher. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency in security. Heck, I see their founder at least twice a day, I have to say, quite handsome and brilliant. If you're a business in Texas that could use a hand, you can reach us at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Also, are you part of the 3.6% of Americans who still care about their privacy? If you are, then perfect. ExpressVPN can assist. Even though 96% of stats are made up on the spot, ExpressVPN can give a 100% guarantee via their 30-day back money guarantee. Now, without further ado, I'm proud to say today I'm interviewing David Lusk, who is the IT Security Manager at one of the most major respected restaurants in the industry. David, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So kind of winding back the clock a couple of years, how did you first get into IT?
Yeah, great questions. I've been curious since a small child, and I had a radio. It could record. It was a cassette player that could record audio that was playing on the radio, right? Like live. I was a little kid. It's a long time ago. And I used to sit around trying to record a song so I could then learn how to play it on guitar, right, as a little kid.
Yeah.
And I wound up taking that radio apart to figure out how it worked. I could never figure out how to put it back together. I was like 8 years old. That was kind of my intro into, there's these things called electronics and magnets and coils and induction, and that kind of got me started just as a pretty young kid. And eventually I wound up making my way through high school and getting in the Navy, after many years of youth and struggle and fun stuff. But the Navy was good to me. It was a good time. It was good.
Appreciate your service. What inspired you to join the particular branch of the Navy?
The Navy, I had a lot of people in my family. So my dad was a Marine. Both my uncles were in the Navy. My brother was in the Navy. So there's a lot of history of it in the family.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And what did you first do when you first joined?
Well, like everyone does, right? You go to basic, boot camp and all that good stuff. But essentially, I was an electronics technician. At least that's what they called it back in my day. Focused on the communication side. So all ship-based communications, from receiver, transceiver to antenna, right? End device computing, LAN networks, fiber, just everything, communications.
Oh, wow.
It was a long school pipeline. There's some running jokes in the Navy about electronics techs because a lot of us, I say us because I'm still one, but super smart, super techie, but not so good in the business sell stuff type sense, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But I've got some experience with me, so I've kind of overcome that a little bit, you know what I mean? But it's a work in progress. But yeah, so while I was in the Navy, I was responsible for ship-based communications on a destroyer, which was awesome. DDG-69, USS Milius. Anyone out there? What's up?
Oh, that's awesome.
And yeah, we did a tour. We went over to the Persian Gulf. That was like 2000. Yeah, 2000. When the Cole got hit, if anyone remembers when the USS Cole got blown up, she was our relief. Like we literally, we did a U-turn in the Straits of Hormuz because she was our relief and they needed her missiles in theater and we couldn't leave. So we did a U-turn in the Straits of Hormuz. It was pretty awesome.
Wow.
And so we wound up staying, a couple extra months or so there. And while I was there, though, so anyone out there thinking about joining up, yes, service to your country is great, but just word of caution, like stuff happens. Like I broke my spine.
Oh, wow. How?
I fell on board the ship. I wish there was a really cool story to tell you, but the truth is we were playing basketball and I fell.
Oh, no.
But I broke my back. Compression fracture L4, you know what I mean? So, whether you get shot at or you're playing basketball, body parts get injured while you serve in the military, So people out there just, be mindful of that. Stuff happens.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so that's kind of where I got my intro into information security. So I was the crypto tech. I was responsible for the encryption keys and the KY58s and the 56s and,
So what's a KY? What's the KY? Just for the folks not in the industry.
So it's a little, like a little 4-inch box thing and you load an encryption key on it and then you can use that to load the encryption key into a radio, right? So like portable field comms and that type of thing. So, and in the Radio Shack on the ship, right, there's all these encryption devices, and I was one of two dudes on the whole ship that could even touch this stuff. So,
Oh, really?
um,
It wasn't the store, right?
wasn't
It
this?
wasn't Radio Shack the store?
No, no, no.
Okay,
Radio
okay.
like on board the
Okay.
ship. Um, but that's just responsibilities and stuff you do tied to your security clearances and what schools did they send you to, and they got a reason for everything they do. And but that was where I got my first sort of intro into it. We installed, our ship was the first ship to deploy to the fleet, essentially. Secure SMTP, like secure email, you know what I mean, that type of stuff. Mind you, this was, like I said, like 2000, right? So this is 20 plus years ago. But that's the time when ships were being outfitted with computers. I mean, personal computers, not just
Oh, really?
industrial controls. That stuff's been in ships for a long time. But
Yeah.
like back then, it was Windows NT, and there were workstations. Every shop, quote unquote shop, right? Like a group of gunner's mates or a group of electronics technicians. Everyone's got their own little shop on the ship, and each shop has a computer. Well, those all got networked and connected to the network, so now all the officers and the sailors and everyone could check their email and send a note home and that type of thing. And then the message traffic system that was used on the ship, so it's a network, it's a LAN, right? It's got an antenna attached to the ship, and that's how the ships send communication traffic back and forth. I was responsible for that system, and that was the first real entry into like real networking, like. I understood RF and basic electronics and communication systems, but when it came to, networked computers and how you relay messages, that was my first intro into that. And it was a old school HP Unix based system. So
Oh, no way.
if it ever died, you just had to literally like reload the tapes if you've ever done that before. Like it's literally like old DAT looking tapes, like magnetic tape. Pretty cool stuff. So we went over there, fractured my spine, came back. My last year and a half, I was basically assigned to the hospital doing physical therapy and all that good stuff, for my back.
For the recovery.
So they took care of it, but it was work. I had to relearn how to walk. I mean, it was pretty brutal, but everyone goes through stuff, and it's helped make me who I am today.
Absolutely.
I am who I am, but partly because of that. So, and I learned a lot. I learned about people. You got to have people. It's one of the biggest lessons I learned in my time in the military. It was really like, you got to have great people.
Yeah.
If you want to do great things, you got to have great people. That was very thankful for that lesson, because up until that point, I was mid-20s and just kind of a little naive, maybe taking things for granted, not really appreciating the people and the opportunities that they represent. But I think that's just part of growing up. Everyone's probably got some version of that story that they go through.
I would hope so. It's when people don't realize that. That's what concerns me.
Yeah. Being on the destroyer was great. I loved being in like underway in the Navy. That was my favorite time. Like I really did enjoy underway is
what's
like
underway?
when your ship leaves the port and you go across the ocean, essentially,
cool.
right?
Yeah.
So you're out. You can't see land. Everywhere you can see in a 360 is just sky and water.
Oh my gosh.
You see critters. You see seals, and there are flying fish. I never thought those were real, but they are real. I've seen them with my own eyes. They don't really fly, but they've got fins that look like wings, right?
Yeah.
Tuna, dolphins, watching dolphins, school tuna, just things you see when you're on this outside watching the night sky. Like if you're in the South Pacific, you're in the most remote part on planet Earth. And if you go outside and just look up when you're on board a ship at night, it's amazing. Like I can't even, like, it's indescribable. Like it's more lights and more clear than you've ever seen anything in your life. Like you
can see all the stars, I'm guessing.
Everything. It's like, it just removes the whole divide between we're humans on Earth and there's this huge space thing out there, and you can see it. It's made an impact on me. It's pretty awe-inspiring. Yeah, good stuff.
Oh, it's one of the most beautiful things is when you get away from the cities and there's a lot less light around you. Like if you go camping somewhere, if you look up, you can see so many stars. It's beautiful.
I love it. There's I just got back from a trip back to the East Coast, and we were walking some land, and man, just being out in the woods in nature, like I can just find a tree and just sit down. It's quiet, like it's remote. You're in the woods, and just maybe there's a creek running by and the breeze blowing through the forest. It's so peaceful. I love it. It's a great way to kind of reset the brain. You know,
Especially if there's no cell phone reception, which is
yeah,
harder and harder these days.
just turn that guy off, right? But yeah, so then when I got out of the Navy, I joined from the East Coast. So when I got out, I drove across the country. So I left from San Diego. I spent like a week in Vegas. This is after I left the Navy. And then I drove to Houston, from Vegas to Houston, and then ultimately from Houston to the East Coast. So I've driven across the country. That was fun.
Oh my gosh.
That was pretty fun times. And yeah, you know, when I thought I was young and thought I had a plan. You know,
Yeah.
I was saving my money, and my whole goal was to do one tour, 6 years, get out, go to college. That was my plan.
Yeah.
Got out, went back east. I was enrolled in college there, and I was just steadily looking for a job. This is like 2003, and it's upstate South Carolina, and there was not much in the IT, communications, information security field 20 years ago.
Yeah.
In that part of the country. And I was pretty well qualified, had experience, and I was beating my head. I was going to school, trying to find a job, just grinding like everyone does, you know what I mean? And a buddy of mine from the Navy, he got in touch with me, and he was living out here in Dallas. He's like, hey, what are you doing? And I'm like, working, trying to work, going to school, just grinding, you know? He's like, well, you can do that here. Just find a job. We'll start a band. Because him and I played in a band, rock band stuff, when we were in the Navy together. We were on the same ship.
Oh, cool.
So he had gotten out, moved out here. He contacted me. He was like, just move out here, you know? Why not? Find a job, start a band. So I kind of said, like, if I could find a job, I would do that. Like, why not, right? I was still pretty young, didn't have a wife or kids or anything, you know? It's like, why not?
Yeah.
And I started looking for a job. And Hitachi Technologies America, so they make the semiconductor plasma etchers that the big chip manufacturers use. And they used to have a research and development lab over by the airport here in DFW. So Bob Carson, shout out to you. Love that guy. He's the guy that hired me. But so had the phone interview. This is while I was on the East Coast. And then I knew, like, I just felt like, you ever been in that position where you're like, if I could just meet this person face to face, shake their hand, look them in the eyes, and have a talk, I know I can get this job.
Absolutely.
So I called the guy back, and I'm like, look, is there any way, like, I can come out there to meet you? And, you know, just making that case, you know, and I was young and pretty naive. I didn't know this was a thing, right? But they sent me a company credit card and bought a plane ticket and flew me out here for the interview. And there's a whole story there too. So don't show up late to an interview, folks. When you finally get your break, don't be late, or you're going to need to be lucky. So they fly me out here for the interview, and my buddy that talked me into looking in the first place, he drove me from the airport to the first interview. Like the day I got here, I had that first interview. He drove me. So I kind of knew the lay of the land as far as riding in someone else's car. Here's the airport. Here's their office. Here's where he lives. And of course, they wanted me, asked me back the next day for a second interview. I'm like, yes, awesome. I'll be here. And my buddy offers me his car, right? I'm fresh off the street, just got here. I don't even live here yet. He's like, here's my car. Take the first Royal Lane exit off of 635 and you'll be good. Well, if you know the DFW area, Royal Lane runs all the way through Dallas.
Yeah.
And I was coming from the east side, Rockwall, 635. So I took that Royal Lane exit and drove down Royal Lane all the way through Dallas. As a new guy that didn't live here, didn't know the area.
Without Google Maps.
And without Google Maps. And I showed up late to that second interview.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I got the job, you know, but I can still hear his words. He's like, because he told me, he's like, you know, I really didn't want to hire you because you were late.
Yeah.
He's like, but everything else, you knocked it out of the park. And that's why I hired you, but you were late. And he told me, like, the day when I left them, no longer working, him and I met and we had a beer, and he told me that story again. It just kind of made me chuckle, you know, but thank you, Bob. Thanks for the shot there. And so wound up getting the job during that interview process, go back home. And like I said, they gave me a company card, and I didn't have much stuff. I literally had like a bed, a dresser, 2 guitars, and 1 amplifier.
Yeah.
And that's literally all the physical things I had on planet Earth. So got a U-Haul, and I loaded up those simple things in the U-Haul. It's a way big of a U-Haul than for this little bit of stuff I had. And so now I'm going to make the trek. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to leave from South Carolina and drive this U-Haul to Texas because I've got a job and I'm going to move.
Yeah.
And I don't even have that much stuff in the thing. So I get to the interstate. My stuff's all loaded up. I'm gassed up. I get to the interstate. I'm driving. I'm not even one exit down the interstate, and I run over a possum.
Oh, jeez.
Right. Well, at the time, I didn't know exactly what I ran over, but I'd hit a critter. Like I could feel that. So I pull over, and this possum, his teeth had just completely shredded the entire brake lines.
What?
Like shredded, like the brake line of a U-Haul truck. So I'm looking. I can see the brake line. It's clearly leaking, and I've got the few possessions that I own in this truck, and I need to get to Dallas.
Yeah.
So I tied a knot in it. I walked over to a gas station. I bought a little hose clamp kit that they sell, and I just clamped it down as hard as I could and literally tied a knot in the brake line. And every time I stopped to buy gas, I would just buy a bottle of brake fluid to fill that puppy up, man. But it made it. Got here. I drove it all the way through. And when I dropped that U-Haul truck off, I left a note because it was like a Sunday. And I left a note in the dash, hey, the brake line's busted. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I called them that Monday, and it was all good. But yeah, that was one heck of a trip. I was determined to make it here. You know what I mean?
I love that persistence.
Yeah.
Just whatever it takes, make it happen. No excuses.
And it was, that job was pretty good. So I moved out here primarily to start a band. And, we toured, we recorded music in studio. We did the digital distribution thing for music, so and we did that.
What was the band called?
It was called Toe the Line.
I like it.
It was, it was just sort of rock stuff that you would imagine you'd hear on a radio. But, I love playing guitar, and that band was a lot of fun, and we did some good stuff there. But then while I was working the job at Hitachi, so they had a research and development lab. So, semiconductor manufacturing, plasma etching, a bunch of different gases, bunch of different pressures, and a vacuum etch chamber. So, one of their customers would be sort of, hey, we're trying to get, this measurement from this process, and we're not quite able to hit our numbers here. And they would send it over to our lab, and then we would do whatever we could to try and get them even better than what they were looking for. And all the communications that happened there, kind of getting back to the InfoSec thing, Hitachi had that lab locked down really hard from a security communications hardening perspective. And part of my job was to make sure that those controls were effective and were in place. That was cool. But, a lot of it was crawling around a false floor. Like in a data center. It was not a data center. This was like a etch lab. But even in those labs, they got those raised floors, and all the plumbing, all the HVAC, all the water, all the gas manifold, everything runs through there. So when something breaks, someone's got to get down there and fix it. And that's part of what I did too. And ultimately, I decided I need to get paid for how I think and not what I'm able to physically do.
Yeah.
And a lot of that's tied into my history with my back and just physical ailments and stuff. But so that kind of led me back to going back to school. Collin County Community College has a great cyber program for anyone in the area that's interested and curious. It's pretty affordable. I did their 2-year program. It's awesome. So that's, working at Hitachi, playing in the band, and I was kind of looking around, okay, what am I going to do? Like career-wise, I got to find something that's tangible and that I can grow with. And I saw that they had a CCNA program there where essentially you take 4 classes, and the idea is by the time you finish the 4th class, you should be able to sit for the CCNA exam.
Awesome.
And I was like, okay, well, if I get a CCNA, then that's the entry back into that. Because mind you, I had all that Navy experience, but I didn't have any experience in the civilian sector at all. And I never really went through like a transition. Like I just went from the Navy to playing guitar in a band, working in a research lab. I kind of skipped the whole corporate routes in a way. You know what I mean? It's a little different there. But yeah, so going to school and did those first 4 classes, sat for the CCNA, and Catherine Fant, shout out to her, she's a teacher over at Collin County. I had her for the first 3 of those classes, those CCNA classes. And the first day of the 3rd class, she walked in and said, does anyone need a job? And of course, I immediately raised my hand, and I wound up getting an intern position at a SOC, like a butt-in-seat security operations center gig. I was, at the time, it was AlcatelLucent. I don't know if they've been
Water sold,
merged or whatever, but and it was in Plano. It was an actual SOC with computer screens all over the place and pulling logs and doing pivot tables and digging through SIMs and IR type stuff. It was legit work.
That's awesome.
And
what's your favorite part about that? That's a whole new role. That's That's night and day between the last role too.
The thing that I enjoyed the most was observing the smart techie infosec people that were able to communicate what they were doing to the people that were paying for it, and me noticing like their ability to do that. The better they got at that, the better they did with their whole career. That was the thing that I really learned from that job. I mean, there was some cool techie stuff that we did, right? Like dumping through IR logs and sim things, and trying to find bad. Like that stuff's cool and fun, but at a high level business perspective, seeing people that are scoped with designing, purchasing, and implementing solutions for business problems, and the better that they were able to tell the problem owner about what they were doing, the more they were able to sell. Like selling, right? So that really made an impact for me. So I was there. That's a SOC job, AlcatelLucent, and they wanted to hire me on. So I'm trying to figure out how I got down to the next step in my career path there. Sorry, I was thinking through.
No worries.
They wanted to hire me on. This was like 14-ish or so, 2015. I forget, it's a little fuzzy, somewhere around there. And but they couldn't make room, right? Budget, headcount, all that stuff. They just couldn't make room. So my manager at the time at Alcatel, he's like, hey, there's this huge insurance company coming to town. They're building this massive campus. I'm sure they're hiring. You should try. And so I did, and wound up getting that position.
Nice.
And, huge insurance company. And, I mean, the people that I met there, and they hired me on there. They were building out their version of sort of an internal security operations center, if you will. They called it something different, but they were building their own internal version of that. And they hired me. I was part of one of the first few hires that they did for their SIM team. So
that's awesome.
They had purchased a product, and they were looking to implement the product and get all the log sources in and start looking for bad, right?
Yeah.
And so when they hired me in, it was, they just hired me in to sort of do that. And I was there for a total of 5 years. And, of course, by the time I left there, I was sort of running that team, product owner, and then ultimately just running that team. And again, that goes back to people. That was the best part of that role, was some of the people that I got to work with. People that do information security for a living, the good ones. I don't want to say the good ones, like the ones that actually know, not just keyboard strokes, but how to integrate different systems to do really amazing things. Those people, they're great. Like you need those people. Like those are the ones that we need to sort of aggregate and curate, take care of those people. We need more of us. And then while I was there, so in 2012, I'm going to take a little bit of a derailment here, but in 2012, my father-in-law, one of my most favorite humans on planet Earth, I guess ex-father-in-law, but anyway, still one of my favorite humans on Earth. He got me a Mr. Beer kit for Christmas.
Oh, really?
And I had never made beer. I didn't know that you could make beer. I didn't know that was a thing. And so it was me and one of his sons and him. And the three of us, he had gotten us 3 beer kits. And so this was Christmas time, December, and we made an agreement, everyone make your beer and bring it to the Super Bowl party in 2013, right? Yeah. So that's, late February, that's 6 to 8 weeks. That's about how much time it takes to make a batch of beer. So we did that. We all made our beers, made a gallon, which was like 8 beers or 9 beers. Brought them, and I made the best.
Oh, nice.
I won. It was only a competition of 3, but
still
I was hooked. I was hooked. And then right around that same time, some of the guys that I was working with at that insurance company, they were beer lovers. Like, we're still friends to this day. We still go on beer runs to brewery tours up in Oklahoma or wherever, like, we're still really tight. Anyway, so through them, I discovered a beer, the Lakewood Temptress. Have you ever had it?
No, what's that?
So Lakewood Brewery is here in Dallas, and they have a stout beer. It's a milk stout called the Temptress, and it's a double chocolatey, dark stout beer, milk stout. It's delicious. And when I tasted it, my first thought was, if I could make this beer, I would not buy any more beer ever again.
Really?
And that's right about the time I got the Mr. Beer kit and made the beer.
Yeah. So
that's kind of got me jazzed up, energized of, I can make this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's fun. I enjoy it. So that led me to meeting someone that we worked at the same company. We didn't necessarily work together, but he was already brewing on like a 10-gallon system
Oh, really?
in his garage, and he lived close to me.
Yeah.
So I, of course, walked up to him in the elevator one day. I said, "Hello, my name's David. I hear you make beer." You know, we brewed together. I brewed with him in his garage for like 3 years.
That's awesome.
And then built a house, and the house included a 20 by 30 detached shop, which was built for the express purposes of making beer.
Oh, really?
Not as a business,
Yeah.
not because at the time this was just passion, hobby.
Oh, yeah.
But I bought a half barrel Spike brewing system. So that is, Spike is they make home brewing equipment. A half barrel essentially means that you yield 15 gallons every time you brew. The boil kettle holds about 22 gallons of liquid in it, volume wise. And so, it's all stainless steel. It's all grain. There's a hot liquor tank. There's a mash tun. There's a boil kettle. There's fermenters. There's a glycol chiller. Everything that you would expect to see in a production brewery. Mm-hmm. So I like to say the rig it's professional quality. It's just not commercial scale.
Yeah.
Right? And I brewed on that rig for about 3 years, about 2.5 years, I guess. I joined a brew club, started entering into homebrew competitions, started winning medals.
Oh, nice.
Started aging stouts and whiskey barrels and doing all kinds of fun things. And ultimately decided, okay, I'm going to take a shot at this. I started learning the business of it, started working up pro forma, met with the Collin County Small Business Association Development Committee, SBADC, I think they call it, to kind of go over my pro forma and look at my spreadsheets and help me get ready to start shopping for capital.
Oh, cool.
Shopped it to banks, kind of got the thumbs up to proceed from the bank. And
nice.
Then I kind of thought, well, let me see if what kind of capital private investment could I potentially generate? Mm-hmm. And did that. The whole project was pretty much funded. And then some personal life stuff happened, and I had to pause that project, right? Yeah. But long story short is I love beer. I love making it. I love talking about it. I love fermentation. I love coming up with new recipes and then trying to make it and then sharing it and getting feedback and then tuning the recipe. I love the math of beer. The volume of it scales very well when you look at the business math of beer. But from a business perspective, anyone out there that's thinking they want to build a brewery, you probably already know this, but it's very capital upfront.
Yeah.
So, and mind you, this is something I'm working on doing, so it's going to happen. But you got to have all the money up front. So to apply for a permit, I'm in Texas currently, so I'm only talking about Texas. But to apply for a permit from the TABC, the first question is, what is your location?
Yeah, what's the TBAC? Is that the guy?
Texas Alcohol Beverage Commission.
Okay,
they're the ones that give you a brewer's permit, permit to legally make and sell beer.
Oh, okay.
Right. So the one of the first questions on that permit application is, what is your location? Mm-hmm. And what that implies is you have commercial real estate.
Yeah.
And you have the ability to make beer, which means you have to have all the equipment to make. So you have to have the location, you have to have the equipment, you have to have everything in place before, to apply.
They could potentially deny you.
Potentially, right? Or, there's hurdles, right?
Yeah.
Things happen. There's and so that's
a lot of risk.
And you're talking, if you want to do, say, a 10-barrel production system, so 10 barrels, a barrel of beer is, 52.1 gallons of beer, right? So if you're going to do 500, I'm doing rough math here, but 500 gallons of beer every time you produce beer, mm-hmm. right? That's the volume that you're looking at. And you're going to brew anywhere from 4 to 7 times a week. You might do a double batch one day, right? To be able to have enough volume to sell, to have revenue to cover your $1.5 million in startup cost, right?
Oh, wow.
Like, you talk about you have to buy the 10-barrel production system, right? It's all got to get plumbed. You're going to need glycol. You're going to need glycol chilling, not to mention the bar. Like,
What's glycol?
Glycol is an agent used in chilling.
Oh, really?
So it's got a freeze point much lower than water. Mm-hmm. So you can use glycol in piping to cool beer and
Really?
maintain a temperature. So like if my beer is supposed to ferment at 68.2 degrees, then I will have glycol going around that vessel, and then I will control the temperature of the glycol to control the temperature in the vessel.
Really?
Oh yeah.
That's pretty cool. And then is the temperature most vital during the fermentation process?
Yes.
And then after it's a little bit more stable, you can put it on a store shelf and
Yes.
it's a little, okay.
Yeah. The temperature during fermentation is one of the most important things when,
really?
when you're making a beer. Yeah. Whether it's at home or in a production brewery. It's debatable, right? But my opinion, most people would agree, but my opinion is the most important thing is cleanliness and sanitization. Like, if you know how to clean and sanitize things and you know how to boil water, you can make beer.
Yeah.
Really. But yeah, so that brewery that's a passion project that I'm working to build. And then, so while I was with that insurance company, kind of going back to the InfoSec thing, two different business things there. At first, I thought, well, how on earth am I ever going to generate enough capital to fund building a brewery?
Yeah.
Right. And I thought, okay, well, I'd already formed a business for the purposes of consulting, and had the idea of pursuing government contracts.
There's a lot of them.
Like writing, bid proposals and pursuing sort of service-connected disabled veterans set-aside contracts.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I decided that was not something I was going to pursue. But in the more, I guess now, really, I will be leveraging that business to, I kind of hinted at it earlier, but essentially connect business problem owners, so people that have information security related business problems, with business solution owners, right? Yeah. For a fee, of course, obviously. Yeah. But I mean, it's something that I've experienced a ton throughout my career in information security is, so there's no magic bullet. There's no silver special anti-deterrent against fraud and crime and cyber forensics. Like,
it'd be nice, but no.
Things are going to happen.
Yeah.
However, there are really good products out there that can mitigate large chunks of business risk.
Oh, yeah.
But they're not free, and most companies don't have budget. Yeah. So that's kind of goes back to something that I was alluding to earlier, but something that I've learned through the course of my InfoSec career is the better I get at telling people, if you spend this much money, you buy down this much risk, the better I get at telling that story, the better my career goes.
Absolutely.
And whether that's trying to, on working for an employer and trying to get a business justification for this big spend for some new snazzy widget gizbang thing, it's the same concept.
Absolutely.
Or if I'm trying to help a potential client understand their ROI versus what they're about to spend. In my head, it's the same thing. It's just different people, different perspective, different conversation, but the subject matter is still the same in my head. Grace-based consulting services is a business, and I leverage that business to connect business problem owners with business solution providers. And I'll be doing that. I'm still working my day job. I mean, and can't. We all love to hustle, right? Like you've got the podcast, I've got things, but I still have a day job. Right. And until my side hustles overcome my day job, I will continue to have a day job. You know what I mean? But
that's a smarter move. I chose to do 180-degree flip, but that's most successful entrepreneurs. They keep their day job as long as possible, so you have that nice base, confirmed, known income. And then once you have that pivotal moment when your hustle has more income than the day job, then you can make that more confident leap. It's the water's a little bit more. You can see through the waters a little bit more.
Yeah, we can get into people a little bit. I'd like to. Kind of going back in time to when I was with this insurance company, and they were actively hiring when they hired me, and then over the course of 5 years or so, I got to be more involved with hiring of other people that would be on our team or teams that we would work with in the future, that type thing. And man, this is all cyber information security related, right? And there are people have different opinions on how hiring gets done. I don't think there's any necessarily right answer. I do think there's probably a few wrong candidate profiles.
Oh yeah.
Like there's certain things that if they happen, you should probably go the other way. But so what am I talking about? So Fortune 100 type companies, huge companies, and they're going to go higher, right?
Yeah.
So maybe they go out to some college campus somewhere, multiple college campuses.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe they even do things that aren't college campuses. Maybe they do like industry peer events, right? Like we all get together and do like
Cybersecurity
vendor get
summits
ups, yeah, summits, those
networking
type
events.
things.
Yeah.
So these companies, these Fortune 100 companies will go there and they'll have little booths and they'll talk about themselves and their culture and who they're looking to hire. And so there's that profile, that candidate profile is pretty wide. So you might get someone that's got no college experience. And within that group of no college experience, you're going to have varying degrees of real world experience, right? Well, I've worked with hiring managers that if you don't have any college, they don't want to.
Really?
You're not like you go in the not a candidate pile. Like I've worked with people that's their mentality.
Oh, wow.
And I've tried to coach them and counsel them that you may be doing it not the most effective, optimum way, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's plenty of people out there that started hacking because they didn't have a job, or a lot of people get into hacking because there's something they don't have.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, the attraction is I can make this thing that I don't have do something that it's not supposed to do.
Yeah.
There's a real tangible attraction to that type of mentality.
It's a fascinating puzzle for a lot of people too.
A lot of people, that's how a lot of people get into it. And then you can wind up with somewhere between 13 years old and 18 years old running a global ransomware campaign.
Yeah.
Like that guy can probably teach your IT department more about ransomware than the person selling your EDR solution. Let's be real.
Oh yeah.
So, and what do I mean by that? Again, there's no right answer and there's no real wrong answer, but I just encourage people that are hiring to have an open mind.
Oh yeah.
Like, is this person coachable? Are they trainable? Do they have that personality type where you can teach them what you want to teach them and then just let them go and be prosperous?
Yeah.
There's different types of humans. That's one of my sort of things that gets me bent over about sort of corporate bureaucracy. It's more difficult to account for that personal human character, which is the people are what make our companies successful. If I'm getting up on a soapbox, I apologize.
Oh, no, I agree. I think a lot of that is a lot of these companies, and I used to work at one of the largest tech companies. I worked at HPE for 4 years of inside sales, and Aruba for 1 year of field sales. And I've talked to hiring managers and just 'cause I was curious, and a lot of them are just kind of constructed, or they're put into these boxes. They're not allowed to deviate. And it's just one of those things where I think getting rid of a lot of those requirements will increase the sample size. So recently, I think about 18, 24 months ago, HPE got rid of the mandatory you must have a bachelor's degree in order to be an inside sales rep, which I'm all for because sales is one of the most versatile things where you can, start a lemonade stand as a kid and start understanding the basic concepts of a business. And there's a lot of translation from that into the real world or, bigger businesses. So I think a lot of the tech companies especially are starting to wake up to the fact that life experience is a lot more important than what a piece of paper might necessarily recommend, even though, there are some great cybersecurity programs in colleges. I mean, life experience is just worth so much more in my opinion. I mean, are you actually breaking into the companies, seeing these threats, reacting, remediating in real time? That's invaluable experience. And a lot of those people are starting off young and they may not necessarily have that college degree. But yeah, I think one of the most important things big businesses need to do to continue to be successful is just chisel away at some of those requirements and some of the bureaucracy and decrease some of the levels of approvals. Because in order to hire someone, some companies might take 8 people to sign off on it. I mean, it gets to a certain point when you have to ask yourself how many of those signatures are really required, or
I think it's I think humans can solve human-related problems. That's at a fundamental level. That's how I think about it. It depends on the problem that you're hiring for. Like, what kind of solution provider do you need? Like, when you think about that human that you're going to hire for some role or some job, what is it that you, as the person doing the hiring, what do you need them to be able to do, and kind of go build from that. Yep. There's all different types of soft skills. I've heard that in very large corporate settings where we hire for hard skills and we fire for soft skills, right? So you don't necessarily need to walk your new junior security analyst up to a whole panel of auditors. Like you wouldn't set them up that way. Like you wouldn't, that's not something that would be done. So, you just have to keep in mind what is their skill set currently versus what I need to get done.
Yep.
I mean, but too many times from my experience, people get wrapped up in what degree, what school, what project or funding have you done or implemented. I think that's a more valuable response than where did you go to school.
Agreed.
What projects have you implemented? What value have you returned to a business? But again, you're not going to ask that type of question to someone interviewing for a junior information security analyst role, right? Like that's not. It just depends on who you're interviewing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think humans create corporations, and we work for them, and we can fix a lot of these problems.
Yeah.
So crypto. Let's get into crypto, shall we?
Absolutely, yeah.
Humans and human problems,
Giddy
right?
up.
So FTX.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. Do your own research. So FTX, right? So you've got SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried, and there's a lot of information out there.
Speculation.
Right? Twitter, mainstream media, news outlets. There's a lot out there going on. But at a very high level, for sure, FTX was using a token that they generated.
And what's it, just for the layman's terms, like for the parents or folks at home, what's a token, or just conceptually, what is the technology for them?
Okay, so FTX, the company, is a centralized exchange, meaning it's a centralized place where people can exchange their fiat currency, so in our case, dollars, for some flavor of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, VRA, Gallop. There's a long list of them, right? Because you cannot do that going to Bank of America, right? Like you can't do that.
So it's similar to, like in the old movies, you'd see a currency exchange where, if you go to an airport, you're going to another country, hey, here's my US dollar, give me some pesos or give me some francs or something like that.
Yes.
But now it's all digital.
Yes. And that FTX was a centralized exchange. Okay.
Which means it's all in one place.
Yes.
In layman's terms.
So going back to the original white paper of the OG, Bitcoin, in general, okay, people out there, peers, they might prosecute me, but so essentially at a very high level, Bitcoin, as it was written, was meant to be designed in purpose to be a decentralized public ledger for digital payments.
And what's decentralized, just for the...
Right. So decentralized means that no one owner, entity, player of that system can control the system.
So it's not just on one, it's not just on my PC and I'm controlling it. It's a spread across digitally.
Correct. Yep. So you get into all these computers that are crunching hashes to verify prime numbers, right? And that is all part of mathematical operations of the blockchain to prove the information contained within a block has been verified. That's at a high level, that's what we're talking about here. So getting back to FTX, centralized exchange, which is, think about it, right? So centralized exchange for something that was designed to be a decentralized public ledger.
Sounds a lot easier to attack.
Right. So now you've got, and FTX is not the only one, but they're one of the ones that did some very criminal activity, right? So what does that criminal activity look like? So, at a high level, without getting into very specifics, because there's still a lot of forensics accounting that's going on to verify a lot of this activity. I mean, Congress is involved at this point, right? So it's getting pretty heavy. But at a high level, Sam Bankman-Fried, as CEO of FTX, was actively leveraging customer client money to make loans to other businesses and people for money that they didn't have. That's illegal. Doesn't matter if you're in the Bahamas or not. That's illegal. And he's been arrested. So what do I think is going to happen? I think, because you've already heard people like Gensler and other Congress women and men say that they want to regulate those centralized exchanges. So, and then you've got, I think it was just earlier this week, the Attorney General's office for the U.S. is saying that they're considering prosecuting Binance, which is the largest in the world centralized exchange.
And where are they headquartered?
Hong Kong, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some macroeconomic things occurring for sure. I mean, you've got India and China and the whole Russia BRICS thing, and more. They're trying to get more companies to, not companies, but nations be in BRICS. So what is BRICS? It's another form of agreement on how international banks settle their agreements. That's what BRICS is meant to do. And it's not new. Think about all the flavors of this. There's another cryptocurrency called XRP. This one blows my mind, and I still shake my head every time I say this. This is true. XRP was built by big banks for big banks to replace the SWIFT system. The SWIFT system is that international reconciliation between international banks.
And when you say, just in layman terms, there's the international reconciliation, is that banks paying each other back in loans, or just what is that process?
It's how so yes, but there's more to that too, right? So if I'm a bank in, say, Switzerland, and I want to buy oil futures, right? Well, I'm going to pay in maybe Swiss francs because I'm in Switzerland, but all those are internationally agreed upon to be settled in dollars, right? So now I got to go to an exchange and exchange my Swiss francs for dollars to buy these oil futures.
A lot of Americans do not realize how really fortunate we are. The U.S. dollar is standardized on oil. That's why it's worth money. A big reason it's worth anything right now. Yeah. Every country, if they want to buy oil, they got to exchange it for a U.S. dollar, then buy the oil, as far as I understand.
Yeah. For international settlements. So then you get into something like BRICS, right? Which is, it's Brazil, Russia, India, China.
So that's an acronym.
Yeah, it's an acronym. And they want to have their own version for international settlements. And they want it to be their own version of a cryptocurrency. If you see where this is going, right?
Yes.
Meanwhile, in the U.S., so we don't have any regulation. There's no framework. And we've got humans defrauding humans on a centralized exchange.
Yeah.
So I think how the government could be helpful, one of the ways they could be helpful is, instead of trying to take a hammer approach and just regulate crypto into obscurity, I think that they should provide a framework for how crypto can exist and how it can operate between government, banks, and private institutions. They could do that. That's something that's in their wheelhouse that they're pretty good at, providing frameworks of here's where we draw the line.
Kind of like the NIST framework for security. It's like, here's the recommendations if you want to follow them.
Here are the minimum requirements for us to think that you might be secure.
Exactly.
But they haven't done that. Instead, they're arguing and debating over a centralized product and crypto bad. It's it's not a very intelligent debate that I'm seeing happen.
Well,
which is discouraging,
Most debates in the U.S. in government when it comes to technology is usually comical at most. It's just they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Like remember they had Zuckerberg a couple of years ago talking to Congress. They go, so you don't charge anyone to use your service. How do you make money? It's like they don't even realize.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I'm not here to solve all the world's problems, but in general, I think that blockchain technology is here. It's not going away. Will it ever be used as currency? I don't know. Is an NFT a future? Is it a security? I don't know. What I do know is that NFTs are already being used as an exchange of contract for anything sold digitally. That's already happening. Yeah. It's already today. NFTs are more than just JPEGs, funny little monkeys that you use for your Twitter avatar. There are people are buying and selling homes with this stuff.
Yeah.
They're securing contracts with the government with this stuff. Like NFTs they're non-fungible tokens, meaning it's been tokenized on a blockchain in a way that can verify that you can show digital ownership of a physical asset. So if you own a Rolex, there's people that are making projects that will tokenize ownership of your Rolex. It essentially creates a token that gets associated with your Rolex, And
Like,
then that token gets hashed on a blockchain.
so everyone in the world is almost like a registry for the Rolex, and everyone in the world knows, hey, this serial number belongs to David. It's his.
Yep. And the same thing is happening for other types of luxury goods, right?
Really?
So you've got real estate already getting in on the NFT contract thing. That's already, so when I say contract thing, it's a non-fungible token, meaning you can take any asset, digitize it, and then tokenize that digital asset. And that token is then a part of a blockchain forever, and it's in a decentralized public ledger, right? That's what an NFT is. And there's tons of use cases. So ones that we can just talk about, right, that are already happening. It's public information. So Starbucks is now dropping NFTs into their customers' wallets in their loyalty app, right? So if you have the Starbucks app on your phone, and they're doing it in a very clever way. They're doing it in a way that the customer may not even be aware that it's an NFT.
Really?
Like you might just get like a little cute looking balloon icon thing. But if you have this cute little balloon icon, I'm making this up for everyone knows, but as an example,
Conceptually, yeah.
if you have that, then maybe it's a 15% discount on your order, and you just present it at the counter and they scan it, and you own that NFT and you're entitled to a 15% discount. Yeah. There's lots of companies that are tying this into their loyalty rewards programs, which led me to a business idea.
Oh, yeah?
This is just brainstorming stuff, so no real tangible business here, but back to the beer thing, right? And NFTs and crypto and all that stuff. Yeah. So one of the things that I always struggled with around beer is, so as a brewer, I plan the recipe, I brew the beer, I package the beer, I make it available to potential clients or customers, I get feedback, I talk with them about this beer, but there's no way for me to get that feedback of me describing the product, the beer, if that person or individual is not there, like physically in the room at that time. So what if I had a way to where I could put that story of what this beer is, what the ingredients are, how I made it, why I made it, its flavor profile, the ways I enjoyed, just this history and story of this beer. Yeah. I can put that on the beer label when it's in the store.
That'd be cool.
And then a user just has to scan it with their phone, and then they can hear the story of that beer, right?
That'd be really neat.
So pretty neat stuff. And then with essentially QR codes is what I'm saying, right? And the great thing about in Texas, beer label laws, you can add a QR code to a beer label, and you don't have to redo your beer labels with the Texas Alcohol Beverage Commission. It's not required.
So they regulate the labels?
Oh, yeah. Every beer label you get that's got a UPC code, it's got to go through a process.
Do they approve like the graphic designs as well?
They do.
Oh, really?
They do. Yeah, but you can add a QR code to it, and you don't have to make any changes to your label. So there's that.
Pretty cool.
Right, but think about it. Like from a brewer's perspective now, not only can a potential customer scan my QR code that's on my beer at the store, and me, the brewer's not even there, and they can hear me tell the story of the beer, right? Well, that's good. That gets me an opportunity to give my story right in the hands of my customer, my potential customer. And I can start getting all sorts of analytics off of the data, right? So we're IT guys. We understand this type of thing, right? If someone clicks a QR code, I can figure out what their geo-IP address was when they clicked it. Yep. Where were they? What store were they at? What were they doing? And I can also send push notifications. There's requirements and, there's things you got to make sure that you take care of. But you could potentially send them push notifications and get them to opt in. And now you've got the beginnings of a loyalty program for your brewery.
Yeah, that'd be ingenious.
So lots of different ideas of things that can be done,
It'd also be a great way to get instant customer feedback in terms of they could scan it and be like, what do you think we should maybe tweak to this? Did you like it? No change as is.
And think about it, right? So are you familiar with Untapped?
Oh, what's that?
So it's an app on people's phones. It's for beer. There's a similar thing for wine. It's called Vivino, I think it's called. But essentially, so I'm going to talk about Untapped. It's an app that you get on your phone. And essentially, you can look up. So if you're drinking a beer, you can look up the name of the beer. And you can check in that beer, like I'm having this beer at this place with this person at this time. Yeah. And at the end of the year, you can look back and see like who all you drank with, what were your favorite styles. Beer lovers love Untapped.
That's pretty cool.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And think about what that started out as, though. That just started out as a bunch of beer lovers wanting to share their love of beer with their other beer-loving friends. Yeah. Right? And now they're selling advertisements.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Right? When you scroll through Untapped now, and I can see, oh, Nicholas just checked into this beer over here, and then right below that, it'll be some ad for Liquid Death Water.
Yeah,
or something. That's how they do it. But back to your point, right? So now we've got congressmen interviewing CEOs of companies about subject matter that the congressmen and women don't understand. You know, at some point we've got to get the science and the engineering to have proper representation. You
That'd be
know,
nice.
and like, I'm not saying they should run everything. Like that's a different
They kind of do, but
debate
yeah, no, I
conversation.
understand.
But they should at least be properly represented. You know?
Yeah.
What's your take on Elon and Twitter?
I think it's. I've read a couple books on him. I find him fascinating. Very. I think there's a profoundly positive impact thus far in the fact that he's revealed the illegal collaboration between the FBI and Twitter, where they're directly censoring. So they had direct logins. They could censor certain politicians as well as certain doctors when it came to opinions around COVID. And they also been censoring conservatives for many years. It was always a rumor and always kind of a conspiracy theory, but now I know it's in fact. So he's been releasing those hard proof exchanges on their internal chats. So I think that was a very good move. The way he's built businesses throughout his whole career, I think he has a bigger picture in mind, although just by it on the simple sense of doing what's right in exchange for free speech, I think that was invaluable. The biggest mistakes that tech companies make, and I always wonder if you should attribute malice or stupidity. I always say I think you should probably just assume they're stupid. Hopefully they're not evil. But the tech companies, what they did in the past several years was, especially on platforms like YouTube and Twitter, they began to segment the two audiences. And when you do that, you don't have the free exchange of ideas and debates where you can actually discuss philosophies. When you do that, you simply encroach people in further tribalism. So it's not good for society, just making people more interested in their ideas. And I think the best thing about the United States especially is that the open debate of free ideas is how the best ideas come to the surface, whether it's technology or social issues. So I think it's a smart acquisition. I think eventually it'll be fiscally beneficial for him as well. And it is a revolutionary move. We haven't seen anything like this in our lifetime. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
That long answer to a short question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm very interested. I follow for a bunch of different reasons. The reasons you just expressed, right? Like the idea of open debate and exchange of ideas and critical thinking and being able to learn from other people, and you know, I learn a little bit from you. Maybe you take a little something from me. Like that's how we as humans got to where we are today.
Absolutely.
And we cannot allow that to break down. You know, politics has been divided for as long as I've been on planet Earth.
Yeah.
I mean, it's never been a oh boy topic. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it's always been problematic. But I do think that something like a Twitter, it may not even be Twitter for all I know, I don't know, but something like that where anyone can express their ideas, and if an idea gets enough public support, then more of the public becomes aware of it.
Yep.
I think that's good.
Absolutely.
But then it comes with a whole slew of problems that I don't necessarily have solutions for, right? So how do you, people that are really and truly spreading misinformation, right? Like just information that is not accurate.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? Like, I mean,
I
some people say just let them do it, and if it doesn't have any merit, then people will not fall for it. But then you get the SBFs of the world going back to crypto, and you get a human scamming humans for billions of dollars.
I think that's a great question. I think it kind of goes back to what was it? I believe a wise man, I think it was Benjamin Franklin, said those who will trade freedom for security deserve neither. Yeah. And unfortunately, there are always going to be, theories that aren't accurate. But if you have the open exchange of ideas, you can have the proper, accurate details overpower, or maybe a more appropriate term would be to debate them so that good ideas come to the surface. My greatest concern is going back to a lot of things. Okay, who decides what is misinformation? Because it's already happened. Like as simple as the COVID policy of mask work, mask don't work. I mean, and then doctors were being censored on Twitter because it was misinformation. And that was because the government, they got to choose the definition of misinformation. That's my greatest concern, is who's choosing the definition? Because it's the same when it comes to a lot of rules and regulations. My concern is who is deciding that, because they can manipulate anything these days to be whatever they want it to be. Similar to like when you're doing a poll and asking people their opinions about things, just changing the question format will give you the results you want if you change it enough.
You can make a stat say whatever you want.
Exactly. And it's one of the few great things I learned in college is, business statistics. Always remember, what is your sample size? So I agree. There's always going to be misinformation in life, but I think the more you can properly address it and have the open exchange of ideas, the more the masses will see that exchange and the best ideas will come to the surface. But that is inherent risk. I think personally, as long as you're not committing a federal crime in regards, I guess, as defined as I'm going to commit a specific threat to a person, with the exception of that, I don't think there should be any censorship on social media in terms of like if you just want to debate ideas or you want to say like I don't like this person, like okay, that's your opinion, you can't threaten them, but I would rather have more exchange of information than less, which is why I used to like used to be a really popular web browser called DuckDuckGo.
Yeah.
And I used to love that because when I'm looking for information, I want uncensored ideas. I want to be the person in charge of filtering the information. I want to look at all sides of a story, and I want to see which side I find most compelling and see which perspective is interesting. And a couple months ago, they started to tailor that, and the CEO was quite adamant about starting to tailor in the content. And there's already plenty larger platforms like Google that do that for you. So they lost their competitive advantage, in my opinion. So a lot of my friends are using other alternatives these days.
Have you messed around with Brave at all?
Yep, that's my main one. I got on my phone and my computer.
How much do you know how much exposure does Gemini have to FTX? Because I know, so Gemini, people that don't know, is a crypto exchange of sorts that has an integration with the Brave browser.
Yes.
And Brave gives you essentially rewards. You can talk about that.
Oh yeah, it's revolutionary. It's fascinating to see. A couple of things I like if a user were to open the Brave app, not only will he tell you like how much time and how much bandwidth you've saved in terms of no one's doing tracking you and no one's starting to farm your data, but it'll actually give you the option. Hey, if you want to share this data with advertisers, we will incentivize you, as opposed to just the browser taking all the money, which is why those companies are so massive and profitable, is because of the back end exchange of that finances for the data.
Data brokers.
So, yeah, giving the information to an actual person that's using it, that is a very revolutionary concept. I think a lot of people are kind of still afraid of the idea of digital currency. I think as the $1 billion, the $1 trillion deal will be a company, a person, or entity that could bring confidence to the exchange of crypto to the point where I can go to any store, whip out my app or whatever asset it is, use that to buy anything. Because a lot of people I know are worried, like Bitcoin is prohibitively expensive. It's almost, I know you can buy fractions, but it just gets so
It's
high.
like 17K right now for one Bitcoin, and we're in a bull run, very bad dip, right? It's not very approachable for a lot of people.
Exactly. So it's not similar to like a lot. Well, just like it's very, very similar to a stock. A lot of people didn't want to invest in Amazon or Tesla because they're over $1,200 per share, and you have one of those apps where you can buy the fractions of the stock, but it's not as attractive as buying a stock where you can get $50 or $30. You can buy 2 or 3 shares, like a full share. So I think that's a revolutionary idea. I like that Brave does that though. It's pretty interesting.
So yeah, I've used wallets. So now I'm going to talk about crypto-based wallets. So we're talking self-custody wallets, right? I don't know how much you've gotten into this on your podcast or
not yet.
Okay.
Are you talking physical and digital?
Yeah, both.
I know they're both. Yeah.
So, going back to the whole crypto thing, right? So if you're on a centralized exchange, the centralized exchange has the private keys to your cryptocurrency. Okay, so think about hashing, encryption. If you don't understand any of this stuff, okay, you have given your money to this centralized exchange. Call it FTX, call it Coinbase, call it Binance, whichever one you're using, right? You've given them money from your bank account in exchange for an amount of some cryptocurrency. We're just going to call it Ethereum. Okay, you bought $1,200. You have 1 Ethereum. So what that means is there's a accounting in a decentralized public ledger that shows the inputs of your fiat currency in exchange for this Ethereum. It's hashed and signed with a public and private key. Okay. In this case, because you're using a centralized exchange, the centralized exchange keeps possession of that private key. So you can spend that money, you can link back to that wallet address, and you can transact with it just fine.
Yeah.
But for any sort of settlement between businesses and finance and government and law enforcement, who owns that crypto? It's actually the exchange, because they have the private key for that wallet address. So that's private keys on a centralized exchange. So the most hardcore way, and I have a Ledger or Trezor. Ledger specifically is a hardware wallet. It looks like a USB stick. You can pair it with an app on your phone. I don't use that. And there's also a desktop app for your PC. So essentially, in my case, I have the Ledger app running on a computer. That Ledger app is synced to my physical Ledger device, as in literally like the physical USB Ledger stick gets plugged into that computer that's running that application. You go through the setup process of that, including, establishing a seed, pass phrase essentially, which is usually like 24 words that you use to reload that wallet. And in this case, you have those private keys. You use them. So the downside to that is if you lose that private key, you will never get those cryptos again. Like, they're gone. Like, without that private key, you cannot restore that wallet. So there's that. But the good side is it's yours. Like, no one can take it from you unless you just lose it or get stolen from you, like the actual key itself.
Yeah.
So that's the Ledger hardware self-custody wallet, Ledger. Highly recommend anyone that's doing crypto. If you still have crypto on the exchanges, you are probably doing it wrong.
Yeah, because they're in charge of it, not you.
Yeah.
And they can take your money and put it wherever they want.
Then there's software wallets, or digital hot wallets is what a lot of people call them. So these can be browser extensions. So if you run Chrome, people should be familiar with plugins. There's a plugin for MetaMask. I think it's currently the most popular hot wallet. And it's essentially a piece of software where, again, you can send real money to this hot wallet, and it will exchange in a centralized way for whatever cryptocurrency you want. And then you can connect that wallet with online applications. They call them dApps, just decentralized applications. And then you can pay for products and services using your crypto wallet that's connected to that website, that digital decentralized application. So those are hot wallets. And in those cases,
does the website have to accept it, or can it be any website? Like, could you go on Amazon and buy a book with it? Or
no, the website has to be built in a way Web3 or decentralized app kind of way. It's got to be, there's some code that's got to happen there. Usually it's going to be, we're talking Ethereum, contract language, smart contract language, Solidity. That would be the language that it would be written in. So hot wallets, we talked about cold wallets. That's the Ledger offline. You own your own keys. Hot wallets, MetaMask is the most popular one. Coinbase, they've kind of shot themselves in the foot. You're going to the $1 trillion idea. I do think that whoever delivers the most valuable wallet infrastructure for crypto that's going to be a huge idea. And personally, I think Coinbase shot themselves in the foot. Because you've got Coinbase, right? There's you can use the internet, go to a desktop browser and use the internet to go to their website.
Yep.
You can use the app on your phone, right? Coinbase, but then they also have Coinbase Wallet, which is confusing. No, it's the wallet that I was just describing for decentralized hot wallets, right? So a way to have your crypto in a web browser plugin that's in a crypto wallet, right? It's a hot wallet.
Yeah.
Well, they call theirs Coinbase Wallet. It's confusing to people. Because you're thinking, okay, I've got this wallet. I've got my Coinbase account. Yeah. What do you mean I've got a Coinbase wallet? It's confusing. I think they did themselves a disservice in the naming. So if anyone at Coinbase hears that,
fix it.
It's hearsay, not financial advice, but you might want to do something with that.
Marketing. Yeah.
But there's a lot of companies that are working on that, because we're not the only ones
Oh, yeah.
that realize that that's a $1 billion idea. Whoever solves that, there's a business revenue model there for sure.
I wouldn't be surprised if the largest exchange on the planet, if Visa was already working on something in the back rooms.
Yeah, and that's really wild to me. So
That kind of be the shooting themselves in the foot, though, because
and it's going to be wild to me to see where this ends up.
Yeah.
Because so day job stuff, I work with payment card industry, going through verifying, the readers, the encryption technology, the servers. Where's your data? Does it have PAN in it? All this PCI stuff, payment card industry. We're talking about swiping your card to pay for things.
Oh, yeah.
Well, now through multiple Ledger, the hardware wallet that we're talking about, through Ledger, you can get a Visa debit card that's tied to your Ledger crypto balance.
Really?
So you can have a Ledger hardware wallet with crypto in it that you bought from Ledger via their application. And then the crypto that's in your Ledger is tied to a Visa card issued to you by Ledger. And then you can swipe that anywhere you would swipe a Visa, but you're spending your crypto.
Really?
That's already a thing.
That's clever.
It's already a thing. Meanwhile, the payment card industry and the government with the regulators, they don't know how to regulate it. They haven't built the framework.
Yeah.
So going back to one of the things I was getting to earlier. So XRP, cryptocurrency, was built by the big bankers for them to replace the SWIFT system. SWIFT system is one of the banking processes used to settle international transactions between banks.
Is that the largest system? Or
It is.
Okay.
It is the largest
Is
system.
it the only? Or
It's not.
Okay, so they're not.
That other organization like BRICS, they've built their own. There's a few different competitors in that space.
I know Swift
But
came
the
up a
U.S.
lot.
dollar is the central currency of the world, right? And it's used in the SWIFT system for international bankers to resolve their international buying and selling of goods and services, right? Built by bankers for bankers to replace an international banking system, and they were promptly sued by the SEC.
Really?
Securities Exchange Commission, right? So this was like a year and a half to 2 years ago. This is a pretty famous case. It's supposed to be resolved in the spring of this coming year, right? So kind of what I'm trying to do is paint a picture here, right? What I'm proposing is I think the government is in a good position to provide clarity on a framework for how crypto can play. How does crypto play in the commerce world? How does it play with government? How does it play with business? It can provide that framework.
Yeah.
It has not done that, and that is something that our government it's one of the things they excel at. Here are your guide rails. If you come outside of these lines, we're coming for you. We've been pretty good at that. We haven't even done that much yet.
Yeah.
Like we've got a long way to go, man. Like
I think the FTX is definitely a signal, or whatever you want. It's definitely something that's going to get everyone's attention. So the discussions are happening more often now, thankfully.
yeah, and everyone's scrambling. So when I say everyone, like Binance, Coinbase is actually in a pretty good position relatively, but a lot of the major exchanges are scrambling for what they're saying as proof of reserves. I don't know if you've heard that phrase or not.
What's that?
So when you're a crypto, this is sort of banking stuff, okay, sort of financial regulation stuff, but when you hold deposits for customers, you're supposed to be able to prove that you are holding
A certain percentage,
whatever that, like, different depending on what classification of the asset is. It might be a different requirement, but you have to be able to prove that you've got some measurable amounts of this held physically in your possession, right? That's part of what FTX got in trouble for, because they didn't do that. They were making loans without having any other physical money to do it with.
Yeah.
It's illegal, yeah. There's really smart people working on really good solutions to a lot of these problems, but at the end of the day, humans, we're always going to have some scammers. I don't think we're ever going to be able to get that out of us. But it's going to take us building a framework in a way to keep ourselves safe while we use this technology.
Agree. And that's what, at the end of the day, that's what's going to make everyone more comfortable with using it and adopting the technologies. Is it safe? And is it a comfortable experience? Is it something that you can trust?
Yep. Yeah, so there's a lot of people building them. Like I said, Ledger and Trezor, they're the two largest manufacturers for the hardware wallets. You've got MetaMask. They've got a plug-in for any browser on any computer you like. They have apps for your phones. That's MetaMask. Coinbase Wallet has a decentralized app for hot wallet self-custody of cryptocurrencies. There's a lot of different flavors of that out there. And then NFTs in general. So one of the things, there's this whole like last 18 months, there was this huge like upswing and then downswing in NFT space. But it's been a really fun learning experience for me, like how to identify potentially quality projects rather, how to spot potentially rug or scam projects, and then what's the value proposition? Why am I even interested in some NFT thing, right?
Right.
So, there's these Discord servers where people join, and it might be a whole group of people that are entrepreneurs and business owners and business founders, and they meet to just talk business. And hey, I ate a pound of chicken, like diet and exercise and just positive things, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then, I'm working on this project. We're developing this video game, and we need some digital assets. Oh, well, my buddy over here makes digital. It's just a networking tool, right? And then what winds up happening is some really valuable things start getting created out of these tools. Things like being able to register a closing for a real estate transaction digitally as an NFT. Like that's how these things happen. You got people that are active in the space. They meet, they talk, they brainstorm, they pitch ideas. And then someone says, hey, I've got this real world business thing that I'm trying to do. And someone says, I can do that for you. And next thing you know, someone closes a house purchase with an NFT.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know
these
doing
things
that.
happen. That happened in Florida.
Oh, really?
So, Bored Ape Yacht Club's the most famous one, monkeys, right? Pictures of monkeys and all that good stuff. Millions of dollars. You got the famous stars buying all these Yuga Lab products. And, good for them. You know what I mean? And they've built a community. They have parties. They have, so I don't own any of their products, but I follow their community pretty closely. And they do real world gaming events where they'll have like puzzles where in the real world, people all across the world have to collaborate to solve these riddles. Maybe you have to go to London to get one clue, and then you have to go to some Buddhist temple in Thailand to get another clue. And so they coordinate across their community, across the whole world, to find all these hints and solve these riddles.
Yeah.
And then when their community has solved them all, they throw a massive party. Well, from a marketing perspective, if you're Disney, if you're any of these major players in that space, you're looking at that going, how do we do that?
Yeah.
I mean, so I don't think it's going away. I think NFTs are going to change how they're used. The use cases will grow, but blockchain technology is not going away. I'm excited to see the ways that people can benefit from blockchain when it's used in a healthy, successful way and not from a greedy, corporate, selfish, just criminal kind of way. I mean, I'm pretty tired of hearing about people getting scammed in crypto.
Absolutely.
I mean, we all probably know somebody. We just got to teach people how to be safe,
Absolutely.
But then they got to want to, like
true.
right now, what's the value proposition of crypto? You know, like it just seems like really risky.
It fluctuates a lot. Yeah. So, but thank you so much for coming on the show, David. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Topping Talks also is again on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Stitcher. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, tell your family, tell your friends, tell your enemies, heck, tell anyone. Just stay safe. Y'all have a great day. Topping Talks.